Now that I've seen all 5 Rambo movies, it is time to go and rank them worst to best. And remember, this ranking is coming from my perspective. I only just saw these movies all back to back to back for the first time about like a week ago, leading up to this new one. So I'm coming from the eyes of one who just started watching these movies. How would you rank them? Let's do that in the comments. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my ranking of the 5 Rambo movies worst to best. There will be some spoilers ahead for Rambo Last Blood, so if you're not ready for that, put this video in your watch later list, check out that movie, then come back and rank these movies with me. So how would you rank them? Let's talk about that in the comments. Coming in at number 5, Rambo III. Again, this is me, the perspective of somebody that only just watched all these movies for the first time and pretty much binged them back to back to back. So Rambo 3 for me, and watching it like that, kind of disappears, because I don't feel like it did anything unique. I feel like it was just kind of regurgitating Rambo First Blood Part 2, but taking him out of the jungle and putting him in Afghanistan. So I feel like that's the one unique thing that they're trying to do. Otherwise, all the same action tropes, all the same things, so it just didn't feel like it had a lot in it to make it different. Now, there were things that I did find pretty sweet, like, you know, he's injured on his side and he puts the gunpowder in there and lights it and it's like, psh, it's like that is an 80s action star right there. Yeah, he can take it. So like that was kind of fun to watch. The other thing that I thought was an interesting concept was what the Colonel was saying to him about an artist. He used the analogy of an artist and how when they're sculpting, they already see the statue. It's already there. All they're doing is clearing away the rubble. And they said, when we brought you in to train you to be a fighter, all we did was clear away the rough places. You were already a warrior. So come to terms with who you are and come back full circle, which I don't think happens in this movie, but it sets up something very nice for Rambo 4. So I do appreciate that in watching these movies back to back. Coming in at number 4, Rambo Last Blood. The brand new one does come in at number 4 for me. I did enjoy it. It was a pretty good movie, and one of the things that I will say was pretty positive was the R-rated Home Alone scenes where he set all these death traps in his home and stuff. What I thought was really interesting about that is the throwback to Rambo First Blood. And what's interesting is it now invites this new comparison, because now when you go back and you look at First Blood, and you see as this police force is abusing their power and they're chasing him through the woods, and he sets up these traps, he's doing it to show them what he can do, to show them the type of war that he could rage and how they don't want none of it, and they need to be backing off like right now. In other words, I'm saying he showed a degree of restraint when he was in those woods and he set those traps. This one, this wicked, evil cartel gets his niece, sells her into slavery, and she dies on an overdose, all at their hands. Rambo has no reason to hold back. This is pure vengeance, and he lures them to his home and truly brings the war home and unleashes that war in its fullness. So what you're seeing now is First Blood, but all that he really could have done and all that he could have really unleashed, and now you're seeing it fully unleashed. It's quite gory. And that goes to another thing that I think this movie did well, is it did a good job portraying just this reckless, wicked evil, and just how dark and evil man can be and the world can be. In comparison to Rambo's niece, who is a little bit naive, and you're yelling at her, you're like, don't go to Mexico and look for your dad. Listen to this dude, Rambo, who's got wisdom. She's like, no, I have to. But you feel for her because, yeah, she's a little naive, but she's just totally innocent. And then you watch these evil wolves prey upon this innocence, and it really does get your rage going. When Rambo wants vengeance, you're feeling it too. When Rambo is raging against them, you're feeling it too. And I feel like they did such a good job of that, such a good job, that this is kind of where the grade goes a little lower for me. I walked out of the theater and went, man, the world is just so dark and full of wicked evil. I mean, I kind of just left feeling that. And I feel like this movie left Rambo in kind of a strange place. I mean, yeah, all of them kind of leave you hanging of what's going to happen with Rambo next, but I don't know, there's something about this one where he kind of wins the battle and he sits on his rocking chair on his front porch and he's bleeding out of his side, he's bleeding out of his shoulder, and he's just kind of sitting there rocking, and that's where it ends. I'm like, ah. I mean, it's not like I expected like a ton of closure, but there's just something about that particular ending that I went, oh man, it's not like the worst movie, but I don't know. I just walked out of this movie feeling different than the other ones. Coming in at number 3, Rambo First Blood Part 2. And watching these movies back to back, this was my impression of what Rambo was. The first Rambo movie went deeper than I was expecting, and this one gave me what I was expecting, the pure 80s action hero. Now, it did carry through some of the deep themes where you have the plot of this. He's going back into Vietnam, which we would call hell, he calls home. So he goes back there to save these POWs, except there's kind of this agenda that, you know, there shouldn't be POWs there. So they're trying to be like on the down low and kind of cut Rambo loose. It's like, okay, we're doing our due diligence just to prove that they're not there, so he's just supposed to take pictures and come back. But when he actually finds the prisoners and he has no choice but to intervene, it's like, once again, a time of no thanks. This shouldn't be happening. Let's just abandon him and leave him there. And so it's like,
double-crossed and left behind enemy lines.
You're the one who's making the mistake.
Yeah, what mistake?
Rambo.
gosh, I mean, how much more could they emotionally wound this guy? And he's giving them so much. So it does carry that on pretty good. But this one is definitely more action focused, more explosions, more like and crazy things like where Rambo grabs barbed wire and lifts it up and it's like, well, of course he's gonna be able to do that barbed wire. It's freaking Sylvester Stallone. So I did enjoy First Blood Part 2. It is a good, solid 80s action movie. Number 2, Rambo 2008, or really Rambo 4. I thought this one was really interesting. And I think what I liked about this one is, as a Christian myself, when these missionaries show up and they want to go into Burma, torn apart by, you know, the longest civil war in history, they want to go in there and they really want to make a difference. And as a Christian, that is something I totally understand. But I'm watching this, and from the Christian perspective, I'm like, did you guys really actually spend time and talk to God about this and actually hear from God that this is what you're supposed to be doing? Because I don't think that's what you're doing. And I really thought that because the lead missionary dude, to me, he was such a salesman. And he was so kind of pushy and trying to push Rambo like, no, dude, we heard you're the one that knows all about this, so we gotta be on your boat. It's gotta happen. You gotta do it or feel bad because you could have helped us help these people. And it's like, ow. Okay, if you have to be that pushy, I think you're trying to do this to make yourself feel good and you didn't actually get word from God that you should be doing this. But what I liked was you had the girl. I believe her name was Sarah. And I liked her role because she connected it to Rambo 3 where he needs to come to terms with who he is and come full circle. And I feel like the words that she spoke to him connected these two movies and kind of helped him find that place to come full circle, to be okay with who he is, and kind of try to find some measure of forgiveness of himself and enough forgiveness to come home back to his country and see his family. So it was actually kind of cool how her words, even though like they didn't change the area they went into, you know, change. In my mind, I'm thinking, look how God still used it to change somebody else. Rambo's world was changed because he went home after this. So I thought that was really kind of a cool plot line in the midst of all the gore and action and violence and all the stuff going on. And I think it gave this one a little bit more heart since, you know, the first movie. Coming in at number 1, First Blood. Of course, this is gonna be number 1. I liked the surprise that I got out of this movie. I just really thought all of them were war movies and action-packed and just 80s action hero, and I was really surprised to see the exploration of PTSD in this one, to see how much he gave for his country to come home. And you know, Vietnam was not a good time. He comes home and finds them all protesting him. He's a vet who gave his all. And then rather than saying, thank you so much for serving your country, thank you for your service, he got met with protesters. I mean, he went through a waking nightmare and comes home to a waking nightmare. He comes home to a police force that is also not respecting of him, not respecting of what he's given, and a police force that abuses their power. So it's interesting as it's dealing with that issue, triggering his PTSD to where it's like, you want to go to war? Fine, let's go to war. And that whole breakdown of his monologue at the end is just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I felt for this guy. And as much as I'm always rooting for Rambo, when he's wreaking havoc on that town, I'm like, dude, you are borderline the villain here, okay? Yeah, they drew First Blood and they were definitely in the wrong, but dude, dial it back. Get some measure of, oh gosh, I wanted to say get some measure of control, but then I feel guilty even saying that, just realizing the pain that he's going through. But yeah, he needs to find some healing. And so it was very interesting, the surprise I got getting into First Blood and really what he's dealing with, on top of the fact that, yeah, it did have some great action scenes. There it is. That is my ranking of the Rambo franchise, worst to best. What's your Rambo ranking? How would you rank these movies? Let's do that in the comments. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next ranking video, movie review, theological analysis, or trailer reaction, or anything else I do here. And if you like what I do here, check out my Patreon page. Link to that is in the description. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.